In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can create a really modern and contemporary design that's going to be bang on trend for 2024. Welcome back to today's tutorial. Now, if you follow any floral fashion trends or you're working in the wedding industry, you'll know that we've got a really big trend coming for 2024 and 25, where really large, impactful flowers are being used to create modern wedding bouquets and wedding installations. Now, the trend is moving away slightly from lots of greenery and very pale, blousy flowers like peonies and roses, and it's moving towards more contemporary flowers like anthuriums, large chrysanthemums, big blown open roses that have been reflexed and clashing in very vibrant colours. So the trend is definitely moving away from using lots of greenery, and instead we're blocking colours together like dark reds, lighter reds and oranges and burgundies all in one colour combination. And when foliages are being used, they're often spray painted in metallic shades and very vibrant colours. So today I'm going to arrange some red roses. So this could be inspiration for a ruby wedding or for a forthcoming wedding, or it might be a good way of repurposing those red roses that you had for Valentine's Day. And you can pop back and have a look at that video if I link it here in the top corner. Now, today's arrangement is going to be using this golden urn, and this is a fairly new acquisition to me. This is one of my most recent purchases. Ideally, I would like to have had a slightly bigger vase for the choice of flowers that I'm going to be doing for today, but I'm hoping it's going to work just as well. Now, you'll find on the channel I use quite a lot of floral foam, and it is deemed as a single-use plastic, and we are trying to move away from using too much foam. But I know lots of beginners, particularly if you're in college or you're in flower arranging courses, are still learning to use floral foam. And the videos where I'm using floral foam are still the most watched. And remember, we are trying to move away from using too many single-use plastics and looking at more sustainable options. So my choice for today is going to be the chicken wire, and you will have seen me use this several times in the past, and you will find lots of videos on the channel. Now, this is a long, thin length of wire netting, as it's officially called. It's got a gap that's approximately an inch, which is really good for this size of arrangement and the choice of flowers that I'm using. Don't go any smaller, but you can go wider if you prefer. And most wire netting like this you can buy on Amazon, or you can get it in your local DIY shop. We used to be able to buy it here in the UK from Wilkinson's, and that's closed down, and that was my best source. So this is the plastic coated variety, so it's much better for the flowers, and you can wash this quite easily after each design, and you can sterilize it so that you're not cross-contaminating any germs or bacteria. And what I'm really going to do is sort of roll it over a couple of times so that we've got almost like a pillowed effect. And I'm going to make sure that the raw edges, those sharper edges, are tucked in, and then I'm going to place it into my container. Sometimes I take the wire netting below the container, and if I had a bigger vase I would probably do that. And sometimes I leave it a little bit proud, like this one is here. That means I'm going to be able to get a little bit more height into the arrangement. So thinking through your design or sketching your design, planning and preparation at the very beginning is important, because it'll prevent mistakes coming later down the line. And then I am going to use some of the floral tape just to go over the top, and I am going to squash it down slightly. Just going to take some tape over the top so that it doesn't move around, and hopefully it doesn't fall out when I'm constructing it. And I'm going to crisscross it so that I've got one coming from left to right as you're looking at it now, and then I've got one coming over the top. You don't have to copy that exact method, but that will stop that chicken wire, that wire net in there from moving around. Remember that the plastic tape and your chicken wire are all mechanics, so you really do need to cover them and make sure that nothing is visible when you've completed your design. Just going to pull out some of the chicken wire so it's not too compact and not too dense in that container there. If I was transporting this to my local church or wedding venue, then I would probably put some tape around the outside edge as well, just to give it that extra bit of security. And then I'm going to add my fresh flour. It's not fresh flour. I'm going to add my fresh water that has got flour food added. And you need to get your water supply in here to at least 2/3 on the edge of your container. Otherwise your stems won't be able to get right to the bottom of your container to reach the water. Now I've added flour food into there if I haven't already mentioned, and I've prepared and conditioned all of my roses beforehand. So I've removed a lot of the foliage from the base and I've conditioned them properly overnight so that I know I've got the best start for my arrangement. So for this design, I'm going to be using red roses, and I've got a gorgeous selection of foliages to go with it. Now I have said that the trend that's coming is for very little foliage, but when you see what I've got, you'll understand why I'm looking at a very different style today. Now I'm going to do this, I think, as a front-facing arrangement, and what I've already done to 3 of my roses, or actually I've done it to 2, and I'm going to show you how you can do it for one of the roses, is that I've reflexed them back. Now if you're good at recognizing different varieties of roses, I've got 2 different types here. This one here is Red Naomi, which has that really dark, almost burgundy color. And this is a bit more of a cherry red variety. This is Rhodos, and you can see that I've reflexed the petals. So it originally started like this, and I've bent the petals back so that we get this lovely reflexed look. And this has really been coming into fashion over the last year or 2, but it's making a huge impact in the current wedding industry. And the reason that I'm using 2 different sizes of rose is so that we get a real high impact quality from this arrangement, rather than the design looking all the same and very neat and traditional and very precise like designs we've had in the past. This is going to give it that really impactful design that's massively popular at the moment. So the Rhodos rose is slightly older, so therefore it's softer, and I've been able to bend it and manipulate it. So if you're planning on doing this with the rose, you need to buy your roses a few days in advance so that they've softened, which will help that technique of bending the petals back. Now what you really need to do is just use your finger and thumb to bend back each individual petal slowly and confidently. You will get a few tears sometimes in the rose petals, but you just need to discard them if anything breaks, and just keep going, bending it backwards until you've gone, I don't know, roughly halfway through that flower head. You can do these a couple of days in advance, but it's really hard to do with fresh, brand new roses that have just arrived, and it's very hard to do with certain varieties. Oh, let me get you the other one. So that one is the Naomi. It's very hard to do with the more tighter bud-like roses. Right, so there's my starting 3 roses, and what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to cut them fairly short, remove any of the greenery that would be within the wire netting, and I'm going to use the bigger ones right down as low as I can get on that wire netting frame. And this is almost going to act like your foliage would do if you're covering floral foam. So far I've gone low down, we've got different heights. I've got a front and a side at the moment. If I bring this one in, this one can come in on the opposite side. So it starts to create an asymmetrical design. Now it's going to get wider, it's going to end up almost like a crescent shape, but that's a really good starting point. Normally at this point we would fill in with lots of greenery to hide that wire netting, but I'm going to do that right at the very end. So beautiful, really lush roses. What I don't like here is these 2 are almost in identical positions. So I'm going to change this one so it's angled a little bit further forward. And now they're not quite so symmetrical and not quite so patterned. We're trying to avoid that very traditional look that we've seen for many years. Right, okay, now I'm going to start introducing some of the red Naomi, and I keep forgetting its name for some reason. A couple of these down low as well, just to give me a contrast in shape and a different colour. They can fit really nicely in between. And you almost create, this is going to go a bit shorter, you almost create layers, almost as if the flowers are sitting on top of one another. There we are. And the beauty, of course, of working with the wire netting is that you can take it out, you can reposition it, you can take it out and pop it back in until you're happy with where it is, which you can't do when you're working with floral foam. Right, so now I'm going to do this sort of same effect, but this time lower down and more towards the front. And one mistake I quite often make when I'm working with wire netting is that I sometimes cut the flowers too short. You're so used to having that extra height from the floral foam that sometimes I cut them too short, imagining that they're going into foam, and then I haven't left enough stem length to get right to the bottom of my container. So this is pretty much why I'm going nice and slow and making sure that they are the right length to get into the water source at the bottom. Now, if you're using all flowers and you're going with that very modern trend, then you'll need to bring some actual weight here to the back of the container with some of your flowers. I'm going to be adding greenery, not quite greenery, but I'm going to be adding foliage there at the back. Now I'm going to start creating some side widths to my arrangement by getting a little bit longer on the sides. So take your time when you're cutting your stems. You can always cut them shorter, but you obviously can't add any extra length onto them. So if you end up cutting them too short, then they're almost going to be wasted. Now, I mentioned at the very beginning that I've got two different varieties, and you'll find that quite often in this new modern style that the same flower type, so whether it's a rose or whether it's a very modern anthurium, that quite often the colour and the flower type is blocked together to give you a really strong colour blocking. We don't so much arrange with that very traditional pattern where flowers are equally spread out over a centre line. I'm going to remove all of the foliage. I'm going to snip this one off here as well, because that is really going to mess up that modern feel that I'm trying to create. I've removed some of the petals on the outside of my red Naomi rose, and I'm just going to work my way in with another stem. I'm trying, if possible, to dip down in the centre and then bring my flowers up on either side. So almost like a modern version of a crescent shape. Remove all that greenery again, and this time I'm going to go a little bit longer so that I'm creating some height on one side. Now, if your design is asymmetrical, you can go taller on one side than the other. And I always think with this design, it's always worth looking back at historical flower arrangements from the sort of Georgian period, because this was a very fashionable way of arranging back then. It was a very natural way of arranging flowers, and we've adopted that style now in what we're calling modern and contemporary floral design. So we've got a lovely bit of height here on one side, and I've grouped together all of that one variety of rose. The beauty is that I can keep moving them until it's in a position that I'm happy with. But the downside is that quite often when you move one flower, you disturb the others. So I'm going to fiddle with this one for a little bit until I get it in the right position. You will see that other flowers often move around, but that's okay. It'll all come together in the end. Sometimes it's just a case of weaving it through the chicken wire, that wire netting, until you're happy with the position. And the more flowers you add, the more stable the design will come. Right, so we've done one side. Now I'm going to work on the opposite. I'm thinking I chose, if I remember rightly, I chose a dozen red roses. So I've got 6 of each colour, because I was thinking that maybe if you've had flowers for Valentine's Day and you want a different way of arranging them and you don't want to arrange them in a vase like we did in the previous video, this might be, I think I'm going to put that at the back, give me a little bit of depth. I'm just thinking that if you had flowers and you wanted a different way of arranging them, then this could be worth you trying. Gorgeous roses. Now, one of the benefits as well of arranging in the wire netting is that quite often a lot of flowers prefer clean water to floral foam, so you will find that your arrangement will last a little longer. It's also very good for your mind. It's very relaxing and very calming, and you can arrange in this manner with any flowers. It doesn't have to be roses. It could be garden flowers, supermarket flowers. And if you're finding that any of your flowers are moving around too much, then think about squashing that wire netting together a little bit more so that you don't have quite such a loose cluster in the middle, and it will help and support your flowers a bit more. Now, I'm not looking at this from the front. I'm hoping that that looks really lovely from where you're looking at it. If I just step back to one side and get rid of some of my rubbish, you can have a clean look at the design itself. And if you were planning on only using flowers, then you would continue in that exact manner, making sure that all of that wire netting was completely covered and none of those flowers were moving around in the wire netting. Now, when I said bold and clashing colours with metallic foliages, this is exactly what I mean. So I've got this really vibrant pink. This one, if you know your foliage, you'll recognise this as being hard ruscus. Now, I've bought these in ready done, but you could, of course, colour them yourself and use some different coloured spray paints. I've also got some palms, which I've given a little bit of copper spray to. I've got some eucalyptus, which has also had a light dusting of the copper spray. And I've got a colour that you might not entirely agree with, but you've got to go with this new modern look. Now I'm going to add some colour blocking with this lovely peach dyed ruscus. And I've also got some fabulous red dyed and glycerined beech. Did you notice the pause there? I couldn't think exactly what it was called. So now we're going to really bring this arrangement to the next level. I'm going to start with this amazing dyed ruscus. This has been hugely fashionable over the last couple of years with pampas grass and in dried flower bouquets. But we're moving quite quickly away from that trend. Lots of people are getting fed up now of pampas grass and they're looking for something a bit different. So what I'm doing here is grouping together all of that needs to be shorter, all of that peach colour on one side. And if you're used to traditional floral design where everything is spread out symmetrically in the arrangement, then you possibly might struggle with this one. But I love a bit of a debate, so you can pop in the comment box below exactly what you think. You can also wait until right at the end of the video so that you can see some close-up photos of the finished design and you can tell me exactly what you think. I'm quite tough-skinned, so I don't mind it if you don't like this particular arrangement. But if you're buying any floral magazines, if you're looking at wedding trends, you will see that this is a hugely fashionable style of arranging. By angling my foliage towards the back, we're starting to get that depth. I'm also helping to cover my wire netting and my plastic tape. And again, I've blocked and grouped that eucalyptus foliage on one side so we get that real drama and that emphasis. Now I'm going to go with this gorgeous, well, I think it's gorgeous. I think the traditional ones amongst you might not think so. But I'm now going to go with this really clashing metallic ruscus and a few shorter pieces to give me some depth in the arrangement and to cover that wire netting. And what's good at this stage of the arrangement as well is if you feel any of your flowers aren't sitting in the right position and they're moving around slightly, as we start to add this really impactful foliage, it will help to hold a lot of those flowers into place. Now I'm loving that. I perfectly understand if it's not your cup of tea and it's not your preferred style, but I'm here to tell you all about trends and fashions and what's coming around the corner. So it's important that we look at new styles and new designs as well. Now I really feel that the palm leaves are slightly bending to my right. They're going to have a much better shape if I use them on the right side of the arrangement. And it's also going to give me a lovely contrast with the lighter shades of dried ruscus. I don't want to go too high. I want to keep the design so that it's angled down. So we've got that fairly loose, natural shape. Dips down in the middle, just like this really trendy design is currently doing. I've got to be really conscious towards the end of making sure that chicken wire, I keep going to say floral foam, that wire net in there is hidden at the back. But the front is looking fairly good. There's not a great deal of the wire netting visible. Now we're going to use, look at these gorgeous pieces. They are just fantastic. So these are going to come on the left side. There's a lovely curve to them. I've got to be careful that I don't cover the previous foliages that I've put in, because we're going to lose all that gorgeous texture and all that gorgeous colour. So if you can just see in this area here, I've slightly lost this one, but we can pull that out and reposition it, which is fabulous when you're using the wire netting. And then with these smaller pieces, making sure that I've removed all of the foliage off the base. They can angle backwards, give me some depth, cover that wire netting at the back, and the back part of my design is really neatly finished. Now, if you've used any foliage like this before, especially if it's been glycerined as a drying process or a preserving process, then sometimes it can almost leak out of the ends of the leaves and you'll get some red markings on the tablecloth. So always be very wary if you're using any dyed foliage. It will come off in your hands and a bridal dress, and it will sometimes create a mark or a stain on the table linen. So be very careful and make sure if you're a commercial florist, you've got insurance. Now I'm just going to use a tiny bit of the glycerined beech down at the front so that I've got all of that wire netting covered. But I think that is an absolutely gorgeous design. This one stubborn rose has been playing up since the very beginning. So I'm going to take that back slightly, just adjust my final flowers before turning it around for you to see. I always like to have a really good step back and have a look at it properly before showing you the final design. And I think I'm really happy with that. So if you're looking for current trends for 2024 and 25, that's a really good version of it. Think about those big flowers that we don't often use in floral design. Strelitzia, anthuriums, amaranthus, arum lilies, and those really big open blousy rose that sometimes cost us a little bit more money, but are really good and impactful for this particular design. So good luck with recreating a floral design like this. And if you've got any questions, then please pop them in the comment box below. Thanks for watching. Stay to the end for some close-ups of the video, and I look forward to seeing you for the next tutorial. So goodbye for now.